Okay, hope everyone can hear me. We're just about to get started. It's almost about 11 o'clock. Welcome to our CUS Virtual Conference. In a second, I'm going to introduce the presenters, but first, let me introduce myself. I'm Scott Goldstein. I'm the web librarian at Appalachian State University. I'm going to I just pasted in a link to the chat box, which if you're watching us, feel free to introduce yourselves. At this website, you'll be able to view information about the conference and see the recording of this session when we upload it, I think later today. And you can also find information about all of our other sessions. So I think that's all I need to do. So let me introduce Jennie and Alena from UNC, and they'll be talking to us a little bit about the Long Night Against Procrastination. So without further ado, I'll mute myself, and I think they should be able to talk. And if you have a PowerPoint, feel free to share your screen. All right, thanks, guys.
All right, hi everyone. So again, I'm Jennie Goforth. I'm the Research and Design Services Librarian here at UNC in our Undergraduate Library. So I manage our research desk and I supervise the grad students who work at that service point.
Hi, I'm Alena Principato, and I'm a second year in the Master's Library.
No, I do not. Actually, I don't want to see my ugly bug.
And
ugly in that thing.
And so I've been the lead
right there,
coordinating these LNAP events with Jennie, which has been a really fun project to work on.
All right, so we have slides, so we will hide ourselves and show our screen. How did I do that again?
Share
screen. Share screen. All right. Hopefully now you can see our slides coming. Right. So we're going to talk about LNAP, which is a new outreach program for us here at UNC. It's something we piloted this fall semester and is continuing this spring. So we're going to talk a little bit about what this program was, kind of what we think its outcome and impacts were, and then also future plans for what we plan to do in the future. So we didn't make up LNAP. If you haven't heard of Long Night Against Procrastination, it's an outreach event that has happened at many schools across the world. I believe it actually started at some schools in Germany and has kind of moved all over, and a lot of universities have done these in their libraries and writing centers. And we actually got the idea from a presentation at the last NCLA conference. I was there with another grad student, and there was some folks from NC State and Western Carolina who were talking about LNAP events that they had hosted in their universities. And we really liked that idea. What LNAPs are is they're late night events that brings together staff from libraries and writing centers. And the point of it is to encourage students to get a jump start on all of those big end of semester projects that they have. So we were searching for ways to kind of extend our reference services. Our reference desk, closes at 10, and we know that's just when some students are just starting their work. We're also looking for ways to be a little more proactive about our research services rather than waiting for people to come to us, to kind of get out to where students are and working. And then our hope was to reach students who never come to the library. And so we thought that this program might be a way to do some of those things. And we were also looking for opportunities to work more closely with our writing center, which we have done some stuff in the past, but not as much as we would have liked. I think partly due to logistics. They're like all the way on the other side of campus. So let's see. So our twist on the program is that usually LNAPs happen in either a library or in the writing center, depending. And we decided that we really thought it would be fun to take these events out of the library and put them in the residence halls. And here at UNC, We are a fairly heavily residential campus. All first-year students are required to live on campus, and a good percentage of upperclassmen live on campus as well. And our library doesn't have any resident librarian programs or any kind of outreach into the residence halls already. So we thought this might be a good way to kind of try it out in kind of a low stakes way. And additionally, the way we funded it this year was through an internal library grant. So our library has an innovation grant, which is money available for new, interesting programs that basically things you want to try out. So we applied for that funding last spring, and we were awarded $4,000 to pilot the program this year. So that really kind of enabled us to have the funding to do these programs. So we'll talk lots about what the program was, but to introduce the idea is that our goals of the program, we had 4 of them, is one is to just introduce students to the kinds of things that the library, the Writing Center, and the Learning Center can provide for you. And we also like the idea, our second goal was to provide several of these services simultaneously. So right now, our Writing Center is not in our library, so you have to go to separate places to get different kinds of help. And we also, our third goal was to encourage good time management skills. We have all seen that student who's struggling at 2 o'clock in the morning because they haven't started their paper or project early enough. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, usually we can't really help it that much. So try to encourage them to start those things before the end, well before they're due. And then we just wanted to provide personalized research for students. So let me sit down and work with you on your project right now that you need to get done for the end of the semester. All right, so we had some great partners. Our 3 main partners were our department, it's the Department of Housing and Residential Education, so our housing department. And when we presented this idea to them, they were really incredibly enthusiastic. They have a really robust educational program for students in the dorms. In the first year, they have something called First Year Experience, which is like a series of programming throughout the year, a lot to introduce students to campus, but also programming throughout the year. And they were really helpful in planning the event, I think partly because they had a good idea of what events work well in the dorms. They also had a lot of student staff that we were able to kind of tap into to help us plan what this thing was going to look like, to make sure that it was something that would be useful and fun for students, something that they might actually come to. The Writing Center, we have a really large Writing Center at UNC that has pretty good staff of like 6 to 7 people, I believe, full staff people, and then a bunch of graduate assistants. So for our size university, it's a good size, very engaged Writing Center, and they were excited to work with us as well. And then our Learning Center provides support for students with learning disabilities, but they also provide academic coaching to any student, and they can help students with things like study skills and time management and speed reading and all the kinds of things you have to, skills you have to do to succeed well in college. And so they were really a very natural partner, since time management was one of the goals of the program and one of the things we really wanted to help students to get better at. So this was a really big, like a lot of people to work with, and one of the hardest things about this thing was kind of organizing all of these people. So with housing, we had administrators of the programs that we were working with, but also community directors who were actually the full-time staff who live in the dorms. They were supervising RAs who helped to staff the events. And we had the directors of the Learning Center and the Writing Center who were in on the planning, and then also they have graduate student staff who were actually staffing the events. So it was a bunch of people to keep track of, and luckily Alena did most of that.
They're all great to work with, I should say.
Yeah, so everyone was really, really enthusiastic and helpful. And I think one of the reasons that this program really worked well for all the partners was because it really helped fit all of our varying missions and goals. So right now we have in our strategic plan, one of our themes is to transformative teaching and learning. And one of the goals in that theme is to extend library teaching and support beyond the bounds of location and constraints of the academic schedule. So it was meeting one of the goals of our strategic plan. Housing, they have 4 goals for their programs: academic commitment, career exploration, personal enrichment, social responsibility. So, all their programming have to be around one of those goals, and they find academic commitment actually the most challenging thing to find programming that fits in that goal, and this was a perfect fit for that. And the Writing Center and Learning Center have also stated goal right now of kind of expanding the availability of the services and also just spreading the word, because they feel like a lot of students don't even really know, especially the Learning Center. They really felt like a lot of students don't really know what they can get help with.
Great, so talking about spreading awareness, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we marketed this program to students. And our core sort of marketing message that we developed had 3 main parts, which is first to just kind of emphasize that this is a study event for you to get work done, but with our staff here to help you get that work done. So whether you need help with time management, research, writing, from the library, learning center, writing center, we have staff here who are here to help you throughout the duration of the event, which of course it was a drop-in event. And also, of course, trying to find ways to incentivize students to attend. So we made clear that we were going to have free food and different kinds of swag items. We had T-shirts last time, which worked really well. So yeah, those were good incentives to kind of catch students' attention and maybe give them a little extra reason to stop by and see us. So in terms of the marketing materials that we developed, we had some print marketing that involved half-sheet flyers that we distributed to each of the rooms in the residence hall. So that I think was very effective in reaching all the students. And that was just for the building that the event was held in. And then we also had letter-size flyers that were distributed in all of the dorms in the sort of like main living spaces. And then we also had table tents. People know what this is. So it's like a little, oh yeah, we can show them if you can see us in this video. We have a little sort of triangular fold. Oh, there you go. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see that. That's our little table tent that we designed. And those were great because they went on the tables in the lobby spaces, so in the event space, so people would know also where to go by the time of the event. Sharing our screen.
Sorry, we're trying to share our screen again. Oh, there we go.
Great. Okay. So that was all of the sort of print marketing that we did, but then we also, for our digital marketing, I put together a, what you see actually on your screen right now, this display sign, and they have digital displays in the residence halls and the main lobby areas. So this went up as a slide on those displays. In all of the residence halls they went on. And then the community directors. So the community directors were some of the housing administrators that we referenced earlier. And they send out weekly e-newsletters to their students to let them know sort of what events are upcoming that week. So we put together some sort of email, text, and a little graphic that they could include in their newsletter. And that was a good way for students to find out about the event. And then social media, of course, as well. So I developed a little graphic that went up on our library accounts on our Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I also made a Facebook event. But then the nice thing with the social media was we also got some cross promotion with having the Writing Center, Learning Center, and housing folks sharing that on social media as well. But based on a survey we did, which we'll talk about later, but it turned out that the what folks were saying was the way that they found out about the event. They mentioned most the flyer, hearing about it from their RA, so word of mouth is always great, and also from the e-newsletter. So those were kind of the top 3 ways that it sounds like we reach students. Okay. Oops. Thanks. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more about what the events actually looked like. So when students came in and registered, we kind of scanned in their ID cards so we could have those attendance statistics, but then we would explain to them the purpose of the event, like I just mentioned, the marketing sort of to get their work done with help from all of us. And we did really try to emphasize the layout of the event, what we had available, and pointing out where the staff members were set up to meet with them. We really tried to emphasize that so that they would feel comfortable approaching our staff. And we asked them to fill out this pledge card, which you can see on the screen now. 3 questions. What assignment are you working on? What do you want to accomplish tonight? And then how will you reward yourself once you accomplish it? And I should mention that this pledge card was developed a little bit in collaboration with our Learning Center staff who, they're kind of the experts on goal setting, and they were talking to us about SMART goals. And so SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. So they helped us kind of figure out with this card, having that question of what do you want to accomplish tonight, and having us sort of encourage students as they were filling this out to think about what is something really specific that you can make progress on, so you don't feel like you have sort of this overwhelming project you're working on, to kind of break it down into more concrete steps that you can recognize when you accomplish them. So we have a couple sample pledge cards that students filled out at the events just to give you a sense of the kinds of things that they were working on. These first 2 here were for a language class and then also a chemistry class. So there were certain things, and we'll talk more about the staff consultations later, but there are certain times when students were just working on like their study guides or like math homework, and we actually had a couple people ask us if language tutors would be available, which they weren't.
We couldn't have everything available at that event, so we had library, learning center, and writing center support, and otherwise we were trying to refer people to other resources that would, if they asked.
Mm-hmm. And here are some examples of ones that did require a little bit more of library and sort of writing center help. So history papers, midterm essays, and I like the history paper when they kind of create goals to create a working thesis and an outline, so they kind of really did break down their goal into something that they could accomplish at this event. And as far as the rewards, we liked having that section. I think the students, I should say also, like the students really did enjoy filling out these cards, and they did say that it helped them focus during the event, which was great.
It kind of made them accountable to themselves. Okay, I'm gonna really get this done tonight.
And yeah, so the reward part was kind of fun, but also just a reminder for them to kind of have some self-care. So food and sleep were top items that they were choosing as
Everyone
reward.
said sleep, which I find sad that they don't sleep enough.
Yeah, and the PSL that you see here, I did a little Urban Dictionary research and found out that probably means pumpkin spice latte. So there you go. So there's just some examples of the things that students were working on. So throughout the event, as we mentioned, we had staff from the library, writing center, and learning center available to meet with students one-on-one and to get some one-on-one help. So we did everything that we could to make staff as approachable as possible. As I mentioned, kind of from the outset when they came in, emphasizing your staff that can help you, pointing out where they are. But then we also had staff wearing t-shirts that could identify them, and name tags as well. And we created staff sheets, which you can see in this picture on the left here. So that explained what staff from each institution could help them with. We also had a large poster next to the table, so you can kind of see that in the second picture there. Again, listing the different types of things that our staff could help with. And yeah, we were really lucky to have great staff who were super enthusiastic, had some really good sessions with students. And one other thing I would mention was our first event, actually, we had sort of a schedule where students could sign up to meet with the staff at certain times, and we found that didn't work well. So we kind of changed it for the later events, just come up and ask us when we're free, and that worked very well.
We also originally had thought to do maybe presentations of like a 10-minute thing on time management or something. And basically during the first event, we walked around and asked people kind of, so, do you guys want to listen to a 10-minute presentation on time management? And they were like, no, we really don't want that. I just want to, get my work done. So really the event was really wide open. Just they had time to work and have snacks, and then they could come up and ask us for questions when they needed it.
And one more thing just to mention about staff was that I did put together sort of a brief staff kind of debriefing document, just explaining their role at the event and encouraging them to help kind of keep the energy high, and also just kind of giving them the logistics of like where to park at the dorm and all that sort of thing. So that was just something I found helpful as kind of an organizational tool.
Especially since we had a lot of different staff, like not the same staff at every all 4 events in the fall. So we had a lot of people kind of coming and going, and to kind of help them understand what it was they were supposed to be doing.
So next, as I mentioned before, we offered food to keep students fueled at the events, and that was kind of helpful with the marketing and incentivizing attendance, I think. And we tried to provide relatively healthy snacks. So we had a DIY trail mix station, so students could kind of scoop all these different items that the housing folks sort of organized that table and bought everything. So they could make their own little trail mix, which was really popular. I think kind of a cost-effective.
Yeah, it's actually, especially if you don't buy expensive nuts, which you can't anyway because of the nut allergies. So we had pretzels and chocolate chips and M&Ms and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so that worked really well. We also had coffee and iced tea and other kinds of beverages like that. And we had wanted to do a raffle. And we were kind of throwing around ideas of like, what if we even found a corporate sponsor to have like an iPad or some kind of like big ticket item, which, would be great. But we found a very simple, cheap, and effective solution. And that was to put together, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen here, these little study snack baskets. So we had 3 at each of the first year events, and just kind of raffled them off every hour. And since we had been collecting the students' IDs as we scanned them in when they were registering, we were able to use that to kind of use a random number generator and pick a student to win. And they were so excited.
Yeah, it was not a big prize, but it made them all really happy to win.
Yeah. So nice and easy. And kind of a nice way to reward them for working hard.
All right, so what did all of this stuff cost? So these are our costs, and this is for the whole year. Again, we had 4 events in the fall, and we're doing 4 events in the spring. The innovation grant I mentioned at the beginning is funded by the library, and that covered the over $3,000 went to graduate student wage. So I hired Alena at the very beginning of this program and basically kind of had her take the lead on it. And so a lot of those hours went to her for the planning and basically just creating all the marketing materials, communicating with our partners, going to visit the venues beforehand to kind of, see how we would lay it out in the space. And then also out of that pot came the graduate student assistants from the Learning Center and the Writing Center and other library staff who were there. We paid them out of that $3,000 as well. Also covered by the innovation grant were the money for the marketing materials, and I woefully underestimated how much money it would cost to print all these things. I think I asked for $300 at first, and we spent over $350 just in the fall semester. So I think we're going to spend more like $700 for all the table tents and the flyers and I guess just those. And the pledge cards, printing the pledge cards was also. And then the $1,500 is kind of a guesstimate because that came from the housing budget. We did not buy much of the food, or they really kind of covered that. So that's kind of a guesstimate of how much they are spending. Again, that's all the food for 8 events. So here's our attendance. Again, for the fall semester, we had 4 events, and each in a different dorm. And we were very pleased with these numbers. It kind of ranged a lot. Our biggest event was in Morrison Hall, which is a very large upperclassmen dorm. A lot of sophomores and a few juniors live there. And we had over 160 people come to that event. And for lots of reasons, there are different, some dorms are bigger than others, so that had a big impact. Horton, for example, is a pretty small dorm. What were some of the other reasons?
So Morrison had, we were set up in their main central lobby, so right as students are working in, and you're kind of coming back at the end of the day around when the event starts at 8. So we were kind of able to grab people as they were coming in, since our registration table was right by the main doors, and I think that added to attendance there as well.
Hinton James is another of our, it's like one of our biggest first-year dorms, and we were hoping for higher turnout for that event, but we actually had a competing event happening in the same dorm that night. They had an open mic night actually happening.
Yeah, so a bit of a noisy competing event during while we were trying to have this quiet study.
So we have communicated better with our housing partners for the spring to make sure that there aren't any competing events in the dorms. So this is a chart showing the number of consultations that students had with library, the LC is Learning Center, WC is Writing Center staff. We didn't keep track at the first event because we were still figuring out what we were doing, but for the last 3 events. And these numbers are relatively small, you know, so at Hinton James we had 3 people, you know, seeking out library help. And partly we were disappointed by this, but these really do constitute serious, in-depth research consultations, so, or Learning Center or Writing Center consultations. So you are generally sitting down with a student to work for half an hour to even maybe an hour, really kind of doing a lot of good work on their assignment. So we see this as very good engagement. And we asked people, and a lot of people were like, I just need to do my work. You know, I don't need help right now. And, you know, that's fine. If they just want to have our snacks and use the space, everyone was still very appreciative. And they still at least heard our spiel about, you know, what the library and what the Learning Center can help you do. And we also heard after the events that some students came to the Learning Center, the Writing Center, saying, oh, I heard about you at an LNAP, or, you know, they didn't meet with anyone that night, but they, you know, booked an appointment for later on. So that's another good thing.
So now I'm going to talk about the survey that we sent out to students via Qualtrics following each event to kind of follow up with them. Since this was a new event especially, we kind of wanted to get a sense of the impact and see if students had any suggestions and find out what they liked. So I'll share some of the results of that. This program definitely gave us the opportunity to meet students at the point of need, like Jennie was mentioning, you know, during hours that the library staff or reference staff aren't normally available, coming out to them. Students really definitely appreciated that they could see the librarians and the Writing Center and Learning Center staff at a place and time that was very convenient for them. And again, as Jennie mentioned, they were inspired to make appointments later on as well. So that was great. So yeah, so meeting kind of the goals of all of our program partners with that. And then another thing that was interesting that I don't know if I necessarily expected, but hearing from students, this was a good event for them to kind of create an atmosphere of solidarity around studying and meet other people in their dorm. So, so students saying it's a good way to meet other people in your dorm while having the option of really getting to work on homework. And they were inspired by having everyone around them working hard too. So that was kind of nice. And I think kind of meeting the goals of the housing folks, especially with trying to create community in the residence halls.
And for me personally, I thought it was just really interesting to interact with students in their own space. It really kind of changed the dynamics of that interaction. So helping a student, you know, in their home, basically, rather than having them to be in my space in the library, it was just really fun and interesting to meet students there.
And one thing about all of these results is that we did share kind of the highlights with all of our program partners at the end of last semester, and they've been really happy with the program's success, as have we. And so they all unanimously agreed to continue the program this spring, which we were really excited about, and glad that we're kind of hoping to continue it long term, I think, and find, even though, you know, we won't have the grant, finding ways to incorporate it in the library's recurring outreach activities.
Yeah, we are hoping to sustain the program in future years, even without that innovation grant funding. And I think that we can. We have a lot of graduate student staff here in the library who could take on a lot of, kind of take this on as a project, just in our regular hourly wage budget. And then, you know, the housing folks will still have that money for food and everything. We might have to scale back the events a little bit, depending, just so we don't we are still within our resources, but we still think that it will be something that we can continue doing next year.
Yeah, and really the number one feedback that we actually got from the survey was that students wanted to have these events more often. So that was great to hear. Couldn't ask for better feedback, and we're glad that we can continue to reach out to them in the dorms.
So yeah, contact us, and we'll take questions. We have to hide when we stop sharing our screen, we can see if you have any questions in the chat box. But if you have any questions for us, we'd love to answer anything. Let's see. Okay. All right, so let's see. We have questions from Vicky. How many staff from each department worked at each event? So let's see, we had one Learning Center person, one Writing Center person. We had 2 library staff members who were just there to meet with students. And then Alena and I also were there at each event to we were kind of the check people in, kind of sitting at the registration table, getting people to do pledge cards, registering them, and kind of welcoming them to the event. And then we had the housing folks were there to kind of help with setup and keeping the food situated. Yeah, so I guess that's it, right, Alena?
Yeah, and one thing I would just add about sort of recruiting staff for the events with the our library staff. I mean, we have a library school here. We have a lot of graduate assistants who were excited to help. So we didn't have a problem getting library folks. And the Learning Center, Writing Center staff definitely very supportive of this event, but they do have a much smaller staff. So it has been a little bit trickier working with them to find staff who can fit it into their schedule. But one thing, again, mentioning that we were sharing our statistics and the student feedback of the impact this event has had in spreading awareness of academic support services, and the fact that so many students have kind of come back to them and said, hey, I found out about this event in LNAP, and making appointments later on. So they definitely want to continue supporting it, but it's important, I think, for us to share the impact just to...
And we also the events were 8 till midnight in the fall, which is pretty late for people to work. So we have actually changed for the spring. They're going to be 8 to 11, which makes it a little easier on staff. Let's see, Scott asked about scanning students in, and that was really managed by our housing partners. I guess for all of their events, they asked students to show them their student ID card, which has a barcode on it, and then they have like both barcode scanners, but they managed all of that. I think it's something that they do at all of their programs.
And actually another thing with that, so then they were able to run it through kind of their system, not to get the students' names, but just to like see what dorm they were at. So that helped us realize that it was in fact the students who lived in the buildings that we were having the events at that were mostly coming. There were some, people who seemed to have like friends coming from other dorms, but for the majority, it was the students who lived in that dorm. So that was kind of helpful to know.
And from Brooke, when in the semester did we have the events? We wanted to time them in the middle of the semester, maybe slightly after midterms, but well before finals, so that they're not just cramming for finals, kind of in that sweet spot where they know their end of semester projects, but maybe haven't started on them yet. So let's see, that happened in October and early November, and the end of October and early November. And really for our sanity, we only had one per week. And it varied in the day of the week. We had them on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, different. And we did that on purpose to kind of try out which nights of the week might work well. And we really didn't see too much difference, I don't think. For this spring, we're going to have one of the events on a Sunday, and that's because our housing partners said that that's just a really good night for programming in the dorms. Students are kind of buckled down to do work to start the new school week. So we'll see how that goes.
Should I share?
Any other questions we can answer? Oh, someone from Western Carolina. We were inspired by your presentation, yeah. And it's good to hear that you guys are going to do another event. That's fantastic. And I know that you guys did a bunch of different, I remember from your presentation you had a lot more structured events. Ours was just kind of like open study time. And so it'll be interesting to hear kind of how you guys managed all of that. You would agree that less programming is better. Yeah, we had all kinds of ideas and plans. We're thinking study or therapy dogs at one point and like study break kinds of things. And we kind of nixed it all just, for ease. And we really felt like students just wanted to do their work. Oh, you may try yoga. That's great.
Therapy dogs, yes, do certainly bring in a lot of students. One thing that was difficult, though, so I did kind of reach out to North Carolina Pet Partners, which is an organization that provides the therapy pet visits, and it was hard to find a volunteer who was willing to come to a late night event. So that was kind of one issue with that.
And there's also rules about bringing pets into the dorms. We'd have had to do the dog site outside, which didn't really seem ideal. So it was kind of logistics as well.
Mm-hmm. And as far as the relaxation activities, it does sound like with our first event coming up that some of the students who are helping out with it, all the students in the dorms have to kind of get experience planning events when they work for housing. So they're going to be helping out with this event by kind of thinking about other things that they can add. And so they were talking about turning kind of they have kind of a rec room in their main lobby, and they were talking about turning that into a relaxation space and maybe bringing someone from campus rec. So we might have a little bit of that going on this semester.
So Brooke says from Campbell, they've had counseling services and a massage therapist. That's a great idea, right? Because students are stressed out, and we know this. That's a great idea.
Any other questions? Okay, I'd like to thank Jennie and Alena from UNC for a great presentation, and thanks for attending. I hope you found the session informative. I just pasted into the chat box again the two links. One is the link where you can find this recording as well as all the information about this virtual conference, and there's also a link to a Google form where you can evaluate basically how everything went in terms of not just the presentation, but our format and everything, so we could have good feedback about, doing this kind of event years down the road. So if you can please take, I think, just a minute or two to fill it out. I think once I end the meeting, the link will disappear. So if you're going to fill it out now, try to click it now. But once again, thanks to our colleagues from UNC, and that's just about it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.